Hi everybody, I think we're ready to get started. We have echo on the PC up here.
Is that yours?
Yes, I think volume control is one of those.
Try that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds better. All right, so thanks for coming to this Security Series presentation. My name is Greg Madden. I'm Associate Director of IT down at Penn State Harrisburg. We also have John Tyndall here from CLC and Ed Smiley from SOS. And thanks very much for inviting me to do this. I gave this talk about a month or so ago, or 6 weeks at Penn State Harrisburg, and went over fairly well there. So I got invited to do it here, and I appreciate that very much. So here we go. So the context of this is that at Penn State Harrisburg, we're trying to take a somewhat new approach. I don't know if it's a new approach, but a slightly different approach to computer security. And this is something that I've really been thinking about for many years now, because the way we do it now kind of bothers me a bit. And so I've been trying to think of a way to get around it. So I think we would largely agree that in the past, the way IT people have approached security is essentially... Okay, sure. Let's see. The way IT people have approached security in the past has largely been to restrict what people can do with their computers. So the way we get security is by restricting what people can do with their computers. So this has always kind of bothered me because essentially, you know, we become that old Dilbert comic, the Department of No, the preventer of information resources. And so when people look at us, sometimes they see IT as being the enemy, and I don't really like that. I mean, this is my career. I don't want to have, when I come into work in the morning, I don't want to be the enemy all day. Also, I have heard, for instance, IT departments within this university, IT departments that if you look at them from the outside, seem to be doing everything right? They have good virtual infrastructure, they have good networking, they are using ITS central services fairly well, so they're doing really what you would look at as an IT person and think these people have a nice solid infrastructure and they're doing everything well, and yet their users describe them as behaving maliciously and sabotaging their research projects, because when they go to IT and ask to have something special done, the IT department tells them that they cannot do it because we have security concerns. So this makes me unhappy when and I am certainly, as much as anyone, I am guilty of doing these same things. I have research projects on my campus which I have forced all the computers off the network because of security concerns. I make them jump through all sorts of hoops because of security concerns, and essentially I see in myself that I have undermined the ability of my faculty to succeed in their research projects intentionally, because it makes my life easier as an IT person because I can now say I meet the audit requirements and I am secure. All right? So that is not a good situation for us as IT people to be in. We need to be, you know, the advocate for our users. We need to be the people they can come to when they want to get past those security barriers and make progress. So what we're doing in Harrisburg is attempting to explore how we might be able to get to a point where we can have security, because I certainly recognize that we need that, but without putting those usage restrictions in place. So one thing to think about is how it ended up getting this way. And I think it's been very complicated in that there's not really anyone at fault, so to speak, for how we've come to be here. So ideally, IT policies come from outside IT. Because if I just make up a policy on my own and then someone comes and says, why is that the policy? If my entire answer is, well, because I made up that policy and now that's the policy, that's not really a very good answer. So what we have in a lot of cases is IT people walking around talking about policies, when what they're actually meaning is they're talking about some rule they made up and are now enforcing based on a policy that they may have understood fully and may not have understood fully. So for instance, if you look at 80/20, there's not a lot in there that it really forces you to do. And yet we do an awful lot of things in the name of 80/20 that are nowhere to be seen in 80/20, right? So what we've done is we've made up rules based around our interpretation of 80-20. We refer to those rules as policies, and then we enforce them. And that is also not anything that's going to make us popular with our users. And in practice, IT often writes its own policies, right? In fact, on our campus, when John Ho, our CTO, and I both started, we were asked to write all of our local IT policies, which that means, again, we're making things up. Ideally, we have some sort of governance structure which is creating policies, and that way, if some people come to us and are unhappy with the policies, we can say those are not our policies and they are not our rules. We are simply enforcing them. They come from you. They are your policies. It's your faculty senate which has asked us to do this. It's your board of advisors that's asked us to do this. So when we are going to our users and telling them we truly have a policy limitation, I want to make sure that it truly is a policy limitation, not a rule limitation, and that that policy has come from somebody other than IT, so that we have some way of something that looks enforceable and that they can't just go over our head, because over our head is as far as you can go. So what we've done at Harrisburg is we actually got rid of all campus-specific IT policies. We no longer have any IT policies. We simply adopt all the university policies. So we follow SOS guidelines, auditing office guidelines, privacy office guidelines, but we don't have any IT policies specific to our campus or specific to our department. That way we don't have that problem. The other problem you get when IT writes its own policies is that security gets privileged above all other considerations. And I think that the reason that that happens is because if there's one thing that will get you to lose your job very quickly in IT, it's security breaches. So if you are an IT person writing policies for other people to follow, you're going to make sure you have really tight security, because that is your safest bet, right? So I think what we have is a situation where when people have looked at 80-20, they've written what they refer to as policies that are for their local IT units, and those policies then privilege security and then get enforced very harshly. And so what you have is all of us really, or at least all of us down there, enforcing things much more tightly than they really ought to be enforced, intentionally, because that's the safest thing to do. And what that does is it impinges again on the ability of our users to get their work done, quite honestly, particularly our research users. The nice thing about that from an IT perspective is it makes life so much easier. If you have really tight security and you lock down the usage restrictions on everything, nothing ever breaks. So you can put a PC in and you can come back 5 years later and take it away, and you never had to visit it in between because there's nothing the user can do to break it. So we get this sort of perverse reward where by making things worse for our users, we make them better for ourselves, and then we get sort of a sense of, well, this is clearly the best way to do it because it saves us time and it saves us money, and the computers never break and we never have to visit anyone. So we reduce the amount of labor we spend on things, and we end up making life much easier for us while making it much harder for our users. And again, that's what we would like to get around. So what kind of restrictions? A whole bunch of kinds of restrictions. I think the vast majority of us probably immediately put administrative restrictions on, so we take away their admin rights. Something? Sure, yeah, good time for that question. Yes, thank you. So we do that quickly. We take away their admin rights. And then, or we put software that grants them admin rights briefly and then takes them back away again. All right, so what we've done is we've taken a perfectly normal function of the computer that it can do by itself without us interfering, which is give them admin rights. And instead of just using that function, we've layered on a layer of software on top of that, taken CPU cycles away from them, added complexity, created updating problems and patching problems, all in the name of giving them something they would have had anyway if we had just left them alone. So I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to approach this. The other things we do is we put on a whole pile of software that we say they are required to have on their computer. For instance, they're forced to log in when they get there. Okay, you buy a computer, take it out of the box, you're not forced to log in. In fact, a lot of this, I think the way the users look at it is that we take a perfectly good computer that we get from Dell with a perfectly good image on it, and maybe some bloatware that we can get rid of. And we take that perfectly good computer, we load it up with a whole ton of software, a whole ton of bloatware, and then we give it to them and tell them what they're not allowed to do with it. So instead of giving them what I would like to do as an IT person, is give them a computer that's not bloated up with junk, that can perform to its maximum capabilities, give it to them and say, please use it to the maximum of its capabilities, because that's what spends my money most wisely. So instead of doing that, what I'm doing is taking their computer, breaking it, and giving it to them and telling them what they're not allowed to do. Right? And that, I think, is why we end up getting a bad reputation in IT, is that it's just not a good approach. So we make them log in, we make them have a screensaver every 10 minutes, we make them change their password every 90 or 80, 180 days, whatever we do. We have antivirus on there, we run backups for them, we turn on the local firewall, we have Identity Finder running. You can ask that question as well. Every 2 weeks, every month, whatever it is, taking cycles away from them. We do the patch management and the updates. We've got update checkers running all the time, updaters running all the time, and basically interfering with their ability to get their work done. That's why some of these things, and a lot of them we do in the daytime while they're trying to actually get their work done, which is why they start to describe us as malicious, right? They come into work, and instead of us getting out of their way and allowing them to do their work on a really good computer, we stop them in the middle of their work and force them to do something that only rewards us, right? Because it makes our life easier. And I don't think we can keep doing that. And then other things, computer authentication, we have a network access control, something like that. We've got centralized software distribution, remote support, inventory reporting, limits on what they can do, like we don't allow WordPerfect. That's arbitrary, but we don't. And then limits on what our guests can do. We bring people to campus and they literally cannot get on the network unless they pay. And that seems a little bit crazy as well. So are these bad ideas? Absolutely not. These are not bad ideas. And some of these are great ideas. We've got to have antivirus. We have to back up their machines. In our context, we certainly need to remediate PII. We can't afford to have that stuff going out. We need patch management and updates. We need centralized software distribution. We need all of those things. They're all good. We certainly need remote control. But do we necessarily need to limit which computers can use our network? Like, do we really care? Why do I care if somebody brings their computer in and plugs it into my network if they're causing no harm? That's my question. Why do I care? Why do I need to identify every user before they can use a machine on my network? Again, if they are causing no harm and doing no harm, why do I care if they're using it? I don't care if they come up and use my water fountain. Why do I care if they're using my network bandwidth? That's the question I'm asking here. Why do I need to force them to change their password all the time? Now, the answer right now is 80-20. I really have to do these things. I can't not do these. The auditor's office tells me I need to do these things. SOS tells me, privacy office, I get things from a lot of different places, and we comply with those things because we feel like it's our duty to do that. So we certainly do that. But in general, do we need to do that? I don't know if we do or not, but I think we need to be having a conversation and figuring out where is it that we can back off and give their people their computers back, giving them back their computing cycles. So the point I have reached is that I think we really have two things we've got to preserve. We have to preserve data security, and I think we need to look at that as the sort of fundamental point at which we start. The point is not to make it so no one can use this computer except me. The point is to make it so that if anyone is using this computer, whoever they are, they can only access data if they have permission to access that data, and that data can only be used in a secure way, right? So it's not a matter of who uses the computer or when they use it. It's a matter of who uses the data and when they use it. So rather than locking this down, maybe we need to be looking at locking the data down. The other point is the device usability. Again, we can't keep taking perfectly good computers and loading them up with so much stuff that they become not worthless by any stretch, but much less worthy than they would be. We're taking away a lot of processing cycles. So these are the things that I would really stay near the mic. I have this mic. I can't really stay near it.
Actually, it's not the mic. It's when you're looking at the slides, if you can point your whole self towards
Okay.
it. It's real loud when you
I will
look.
do that. I will just look right here. How about that? So device usability, and then I think the way we can do this is we can stop making the device do all of these things for itself. In other words, right now the way our security regime works is, let's say we have 40,000 PCs in Penn State. I have no idea how many we have. Anybody know? I don't know. So what we do, let's call it 40,000 just for fun. We implement our security regime 40,000 times. That's what we do. There is no way you can implement a security regime 40,000 times and not expect to have a ton of security holes, just an absolute ton. You get 1%, well, somebody do that math faster than me. It's still a lot, all right? So what we're doing now is we implement our security over and over and over and over and over again on every single endpoint device that tries to connect to the network within Penn State, right? So in a lot of ways, what that looks like to me is both gross overkill as well as a gross misuse of our resources. So instead of implementing that security over and over and over again, all of us on every single device, let's get that security off the device and put it somewhere more appropriate so that we can return the device back to the user. So we want to keep in mind that, at least to me, the primary goal of computer security is to protect our proprietary and or sensitive data. So if we've got proprietary data, university-specific data, we need to protect it. And we have the data classification or data categorization project going on. So that should be very helpful to us down the road and once we get that done. So, but certainly any research data ought to be protected, financial data, any PII, student information, all of that sort of thing. We all know what kinds of things we're trying to lock down. And I think that what we need to do is focus more on locking down that data and less on locking down the computers, right? Which would require both policy changes as well as probably some operating system changes, which we're not going to be able to affect ourselves. So the first step in that would be getting our data to secure locations, and right now, and making sure that those locations are capable of protecting themselves from attack. I think that's the important thing. We have to make sure our data stores themselves are implemented in a way that they can protect themselves from security attacks or attacks of any kind. So we take that aspect of security, the data protection aspect, off of the computer completely and put it to the data. Let the data protect itself. Again, this would require us to rethink operating system design. Operating systems that we have available to us right now cannot do this in many ways. So we're really not in a place where this can realistically happen at this time. So for instance, in Windows, if you log in as a user, you now have access to pretty much all of that user's data. Anything on their C drive, if they've got network drives mapped, you're going to have access to that. So we are in a situation where once you are past the initial device security, then you've got access to everything that user has. And ditto for Mac OS and iOS, which is why we have 4 screensavers. So what you see is that our devices have poor data protection design in them, and that poor data protection design forces us to impose restrictions on what the users can do and forces them to jump through hoops that they would not have to jump through if we could protect that data in a more sane way. Certainly we can secure folders now, we can encrypt folders. That comes with its own set of problems. And if you're going to secure the folder and encrypt the folder, why are you forcing somebody to log in? If your data is safe anyway, because you've got it encrypted, then why did you make the person log into their computer and then log into their data? So again, the question is, why is it that we are doing this in the way we are doing it? And what is it we can do to get past this point? Obviously, right now, you can't let anybody walk right up to any old computer with admin rights because they could then use that computer to do attacks. We have to certainly be able to protect that. And then that gets back to the device usability. If somebody can get on your network and start attacking all the other machines on your network, thereby undermining their usability, then the fact that you let them use this one computer to undermine all the other computers is not a good thing. So we have to somehow take that into account as well. So usability and having the computers get attacked, just said that. But again, if you think about the way we have computers protect themselves, all of our computers are attempting to implement a full security regime on themselves. So my computer protects itself against viruses, and my computer protects itself against all kinds of malware. I've got the firewall built into it. I've got all these things this thing does behind the scenes just to keep me safe. And while it's doing those things, it's taking CPU cycles away from me, and I can't use them anymore, right? So what I would like to see is that that whole protection scheme get moved off of the device. So if I've got the iOS device or the Mac or the PC, it's not sitting there protecting itself all the time. That some device out in the network is protecting it for me, so I don't have to do that. And that way, I can, say, have a whole bunch of computers talking to one device, which is doing all the network protection, and then all of those computers are free to do their own work. There are a lot of steps in the right direction that are already out there. There's network firewalls do a lot of the protection for us, and we don't implement. I mean, and if you think about it, it does not occur to us to re-implement our firewall restrictions on every single computer we have, because that would not be the best way to do it. So why do we re-implement our antivirus on every single computer we have? Why don't we move that off in the same way that we've moved the firewall off? Why don't we get all of our spam protection, or our spam protection is largely done elsewhere, but all of those kinds of things we should be able to move off, or at least a lot of them, and free up the computer to do something that the end user wants as opposed to something that IT wants. So spam filters have been moved off the PC. We have things like SharePoint and other shared file sites so that the data does protect itself. So if I want to get data off of SharePoint, I have to go and authenticate to SharePoint to let me in there. So I have ways of protecting data. SharePoint, unfortunately, most of them really allow downloading, and that completely undermines the data security. So somehow you're going to have to take care of that problem. And then I think really some steps that are definitely in the right direction are things like the Citrix approaches, where you've got a virtual desktop somewhere, and it really then no longer matters at all what kind of device you have on your desktop or in your hand, because when you're attaching to your data, to your important things, you're going through some Citrix or network service to get to your data, which is then protected by that rather than by you. So we do have ways of doing this now. We just are not using them in any sort of common or coherent fashion. Certainly not on our campus. I don't know if any departments in this university are taking big steps in this direction. So what I see, or at least one possible approach for the future, is to have some sort of end node security appliance, right? And maybe you build this stuff into a switch. Maybe you beef up your firewall. I don't know exactly how you do this, all right? But we've got a lot of things we can do, and the ultimate goal to me is that the only thing you have on your end user device is just a single agent instead of the 25 or so that we have now. Just one agent, and all it does is talk to my new security appliance. And my security appliance, so then on my user device, I don't have to have login restrictions. All right? Anybody can use any computer. I don't have to have usage restrictions. People can do whatever they want. My data is safe because I've got it stored elsewhere. And now I can do sort of cool research projects because I can give the rights to those research labs to grad students or professors or whatever, and they can do whatever they want because I know I've got their security handled elsewhere, and there's nothing they can do on their PC which is going to undermine security. And the problem we have now is there are lots of things people can do on their PC which undermine the overall security, and that's why we have to keep them safe. Yes? So that is, thank you. That's a really good result. That's much higher than I thought it would be. So we asked the audience, okay, have you had to decline research projects because of security concerns? Our answer is yes. We have had to decline projects because of security concerns. What that means, literally, in the context of the university, is I have a researcher with a research project. That is his job. That is what he is employed to do. And he comes to me, and it is for him to decide, not me, whether or not this is a valid research project, whether or not it fits his pedagogical or research mission. He makes the decision that it does, and he comes to me for help. And instead of helping, I tell him, no, right? That, to me, seems like an unacceptable way to run an IT department, right? It's his decision, and it's his job, and it's the research that drives the mission of this university, and it's the teaching that drives the mission of the university. And if we're having to tell the researchers that their decision on what to research can't be done, or if we're having to tell the professors that their pedagogical decision can't be done because of security concerns, then we are literally undermining the mission of the university. And instead of protecting the university, which is what we think we're doing with security, we are in some sense endangering the university because we are not allowing it to meet its research and pedagogical goals. And I don't think we want to be in that position as IT. We don't want to be the people who are undermining research at the university. So we have to find some way to be able to say yes to these projects instead of no. So to continue on with this slide, you know, it's sort of my dream appliance. It would do everything that's now on the PC. It would take care of the antivirus, to run the backups. It would, you know, it could detect when the machine's not being used and go in at night or something. It would be the firewall. It would do the PII remediation, the patch management, the updates, the whole 9 yards. So we take all of those things, and just as we've taken the firewall piece and put it on a network appliance, I say we take all of this stuff and put it on a network appliance somewhere, right? That means instead of, let's say, for instance, that we put it in the switch, right? Now, this switch does not exist right now, but let's say your network switch could do all of this, right? Now, instead of implementing security 40,000 times, I can divide that by 64 because I got 64 devices by switch. So I'm implementing it far less often. And if I have some sort of central management platform, I should be able to design a system such that I implement my security regime one time and I push it out to my network switches, and now it's implemented throughout the university. It's going to be consistent throughout the university, done the same way. It'll meet any of the policy concerns and recommendations, hopefully, and then we're all taken care of. Now, again, this appliance does not currently exist. This cannot currently be done, right? I'm just saying this is where I would really like to see things go. So again, that's where I would like to go. Now, this diagram you probably can't see much at all, but basically on the left-hand side is the sort of now situation, showing at the top a few of the things. So I'll turn my whole body. So at the top, we have the few things which now live in the network, which is the firewall, spam filtering, and hardware authorization if you've got like a network access control device. And then we have basically a bunch of things we throw on the PC itself, like hardware authorization agent, user authentication agent, antivirus, updaters, patch management, software distribution, all of these things. We have at least this many things at Penn State Harrisburg. I think we have quite a bit more than that. I did not try to be exhaustive. So what I would like to see is all of these things get moved up into the network, and we end up with nothing here but CPU cycles available to the user, one little security agent which talks to that device, and then we've got a much cleaner implementation. And now at our network access control device, the only thing I have to do is make sure that this puppy is on there, and as long as that's on there, I can let them on my network and I'm good to go, and I don't care what they do. They can do anything they want. I don't have to restrict it in any way. At least that's my sort of ideal goal. So a couple of industry examples. I think that this is going to be the trend. I really do, and I think that the BYOD has forced it in this direction. So in iOS, for instance, I mean, it seems like, if you think about it, it seems really hard. How could you possibly get virus protection off of the PC? Well, it's not on your iPad. I mean, the App Store, the app approval process is your virus protection. So Apple did manage to get antivirus taken off of the local device. So that's a good thing. With Citrix, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure you're all probably mostly familiar with Citrix. End users can have any old device, and if your Citrix sales rep comes to town, he'll be happy to show it off. They can walk in with any old device, and then they just double-click their Citrix icon, and they're into the cloud with their Citrix desktop and all their Citrix apps and all their data stored somewhere off where it never touches their local device, and they never have to worry about it being compromised. So they can break their device or have it stolen, and they have no risk of any kind, right? Which is what we would like to have as well. And then a solution I just recently found out about called WorkSpot is basically take the Citrix model, and it has layered on some additional things. So it'll like run the VPN for you and do some things to actually take Citrix and even simplify it even more. So we're trying to get it an even simpler model because Citrix is a little bit complicated right now. And then if you have a network access control device, you can be a lot looser with the in-device because you can monitor traffic on your network. Any kind of network monitoring tool will do it. Monitor the traffic on your network, and if you see something happening, if somebody does try to use your device to do some sort of a network attacks, you can see it with your NAC, shut them down right on the spot by cutting off their network, their switch port. So you have trends that are going in this direction, but these trends are not pulled together in any coherent manner right now. So we don't have a real good way to do this. So why is this important now? Why did I think now's the time I need to start talking about this? Well, just 3 years ago, we had 1,200 desktops and 200 laptops. Now today, we have 1,200 desktops, 200 laptops, and 4,000 tablets and smartphones. All right? So I have basically tripled the number of devices on my network in the last 3 years, and I have no control whatsoever over those laptops and smartphones. Yes?
So the comment via Connect, CPU cycles are in excess on most client systems. Hard drives are the bottleneck, but only on systems without solid-state drives.
I don't really know what to do with that comment. Yes, I agree with that. Yes. With all the tablets and smartphones coming in, you know, we can't do usage restrictions. I can't tell people what they can do with their iPads. It's their iPad. We have a whole lot of faculty now coming in with iPads or Galaxy tablets or whatever they happen to have. And you know what they want to do is access their desktop from home. Fine, I don't mind if they access their desktop from home. I can't stop them from doing what they want to do with their device. But mainly it's important because IT cannot be an obstacle to the research-driven projects of the university. That is the main thing, okay? And then the other thing is, we're all getting very, very good at doing standard computing. We're all getting very, very good at distributing a whole bunch of PCs that are all locked down and they're all the same as each other, and we can update them all centrally. And we have BigFix now, and we have a lot of central services to choose from, and we're good at that. But that's the sort of thing that can very easily be outsourced. If all the machines are the same, why do I need to work on them? Anybody can work on them, right? So what we need to be good at in IT is exceptions. What we need to really be good at is the things that anybody can't do. The thing that I can provide my campus that some outside vendor can't is being really good at doing the exceptions, being really good at setting up those research labs, being really good at working past the policy obstacles, being really good at doing the things that other people can't do. The things that anybody can do. Like if I go in, to go back to my original example, you have a department with a really good virtual infrastructure, they've got their servers going and everything is solid. Well, you know, we can buy that through a cloud service, unfortunately. So, you know, and this is crazy to put it in this way, but your virtual infrastructure, your server room, that is legacy IT, unfortunately, even though it's probably only 3 or 4 years old. Right? That is now the kind of thing we can give away to anybody. We can buy that. Right? So if we're going to be continuing down the path where that's the kind of thing we need to be good at, we're going to be obsolete very, very soon. So what we need to be good at is the kind of things that we can't outsource to the cloud. And those are the things that where we're jumping through hoops to get these policy restrictions out of the way. So that, I think, is a really important reason for all of us to try to make sure we're not declining research projects. Anybody can decline research projects. The trick is to say yes to them and make them successful while still being secure. Right? So that is where we need to go. So, there's a new slide for you, Ed. So my question, since I'm in this particular forum, is how can SOS help me get to this point? All right? So a couple things is, one is to ensure that the security requirements that are out there are both minimal, and by that I don't mean as few as possible. I mean minimal effective, right? But they're absolutely necessary. So whatever you know, if you have a minimum effective security policy that will get me what I need, don't make me go one step further. That's all I mean by that. So give me that minimal effective security policy and let me do that. I am happy to comply with all the policies. I have no issue with it at all. That is my job, right? In fact, in some ways, that's job one. Make sure I'm compliant with all the policies. But again, too often we're being asked to enforce rules that are going above and beyond the policy because the rules make life easier for us. And I think we have to stop trying to make life easier for us and make it easier for our users instead. Another thing I could use out of SOS is if you guys could be your own enforcement arm, and that sounds worse than it meant to. What is happening is we've got Identity Finder and we've got all the various restrictions we have. What that does is it puts us as an IT department in being in the uncomfortable position of being the antagonist to our customers. So whenever these security restrictions come up, I suddenly have to be a bad guy to my customer, and I have to tell them no. So I have to adopt an antagonistic relationship towards my own customers in order to be the enforcement arm for SOS policies. So it would be far preferable to me and give me a sort of a happier campus and a happier IT department if you guys could in some way be your own enforcement arm. I don't know how that happens, but just thought I would throw it out there. Because what we need to do, from my perspective, is we've got to put our customers first. I've got literally 7, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I've got 7 research projects right now that I've been having in a holding pattern for a long time, and I'm going to tell them yes. I'm telling them yes next, as soon as the semester's over, and we're going to do this. And every single one of those is going to require me to jump through hoops I've never jumped through before, and I'm going to need your guys' help. So that brings me, I'll skip to the very last one. What I could really use most from SOS is if you guys could be my advocate so that when I run up against a security-based policy problem, that I can come to you and you can help me find the way past that problem. So that would be, for me, the best role SOS could possibly have, is rather than being an enforcement arm at all, be the advocate that helps me look at 80-20 and find my way past what the apparent problem so that I can get an actual solution. So that would be, for me, my ideal. And then really, to speak to audit, if you guys could help me design the compensating controls, that would be, to me, the best possible use for SOS, is that you guys, obviously, you have policies in place, you know what they are, you know how to use them. When I get audited, I have to meet all of those things, and if I'm not quite there, I can have compensating controls in place to take care of it. If SOS could help me create those compensating controls and make sure I am compliant with the audit and with all of the security policies, that would probably be the most helpful thing I could get from you guys, quite honestly. Okay, so that is the end, and we'll take as many questions as you have. You guys, either of you want to say a few words to amplify anything there?
This is Ed from SOS. You got it, Greg, anything you want. Well, I think the big thing for us, and if you look at our office as we've grown the past few years, unfortunately, we do have to have that reactive wing of our office. I'm sure a lot of you, especially given what we've gone through the last few years, have had a visit from our office to take a machine or to deal with some sort of security incident. Unfortunately, we'll always have that part of our office. But if you look at how we've grown substantially on the proactive part. Within our office, our web app assessment, vulnerability assessment teams have grown. Our intrusion detection and prevention teams have grown. Things proactively, even though you alluded to some Identity Finder things, that those have grown and, when run in the right way are proactive. So we are constantly trying to move more towards the proactive part. And for us, we want to be the place where you guys can come and get the help that you need to do your projects, because we don't want to see projects not done in the name for security. And it could so happen that we might not get to the place where that project can be done, but we at least have to try. The default answer can't be no. We know situations are going to be different. given the distributed nature we have at Penn State. Something that might be able to get done at Harrisburg because of infrastructure or support you have in place might not be able to be done at Altoona or something like that. And so we have to take those into account. But for me personally, nothing bothers me more than somebody coming to us for help, and we kind of send them through the cycle that takes a while when, somebody could just go do it and not ask us and be doing their project. So we've definitely taken note to making things like requesting compensating controls easier, reaching out proactively, getting involved at starts of projects. A lot of times where we see some failures is that a week before go live or a week before something's going to happen, somebody says, "Hey, did you talk to security about this?" And then we come in and say, "Whoa!" So it looks like we're inhibiting progress, and so we've been really proactive at getting things started early. And this goes out to everybody that if you're embarking in one of these projects where you think security is going to be an issue, reach out to us, get in contact with us, and we can definitely work with you on that. But the thing that really got me interested, Greg posted this talk up on Yammer a few weeks back after he gave it for the first time, and it really reflected some of the places we're trying to move within security to focus more on the risk and on the data. A while back, we gave a presentation talking about third-party services, and we talked about it being all about the data. And so, maybe it's okay to use a third-party service for public data as opposed to our most restricted data, and really looking at it from a data perspective and not necessarily from a machine or a campus or a personal perspective. So the thing that really interests me about this is that this is the way we've been really trying to think and try to go. So I wanted to get with Greg to really start to spread this word and really work together to get some of the things that I know we can accomplish, both working with us and John with what they've done with CLC and putting out images and things like that.
Yeah, and I do want to say I've not had any problems with SOS. I'm here because I like you guys. Honestly. So I didn't mean to imply at all that I'm not. It's not like I'm beating my head against the wall because of security things. It's just trying to move it, keep moving it forward. Right. So that's all.
Right. And sometimes we do have people who feel like they're beating their heads against the wall, and that shouldn't be something that you get when you come talk to us or come talk to any organization within ITS. I mean, we want to help, so we want people to come back, and we want people to ask us to help them to do things. And if they feel like they're beating their head against the wall, they obviously won't come back. Right. So.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've done down there is we're much more free with admin rights than we used to be. We still make everybody sign a piece of paper and read a form and all that sort of thing. But I'm almost to the point where I think we should be taking the opposite approach, where we just give everybody admin rights, and then if they don't want them, they can sign a form and say that they don't have them, right? Because that way, I know what the situation is, right? Right now, it's very complicated. Yes?
Yeah, while I sympathize with the research aspect of it, I'm concerned about giving people admin rights again and finding IT staff running around just fixing computers because they downloaded screensaver programs and silly things like that.
And my answer to that, which you can take it as a good answer or a bad answer or medium answer, but if we are going to do this, one thing we have to be much better at as IT people is putting machines back the way they were before they got messed up, right? So that's one thing we're not really very good at. Right now, if somebody gets a virus, I'm probably going to have to go take their computer away. I'll take them and we go ahead and give them a new one, and then work on it offline. But it can't be 72 hours to get a person's machine back. We need to be able to roll that machine back near instantaneously. And that way we don't have the problem you're talking about where people are down for a whole day. And that is something we just need to be better at as IT people in general. We need to be much better at rolling a PC back to the point before it was corrupted. Really fast, like 5 to 10 minutes type of fast. And until we get to that point, we can't really let people wide open. Or at least we can't as long as the antivirus, as long as we still have struggles with antivirus. Ken?
Yeah, the comment in Connect is, I don't think users want admin rights as much as they want software installed and updated quickly. Most users are very poor at installing and updating software on their home systems where they are admins.
And I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah, I mean, most of them don't know what it really means to have admin rights, and they really want, most of them use admin rights as a synonym for wanting to have software installed quickly. So I think that's accurate, yes.
Well, and I think something that we saw from the SOS perspective on admin rights was kind of the difference between having admin rights and operating in least privilege. And a lot of times when we talked about administrative rights, it was that you couldn't have an admin account, when really we're talking about running as least privilege. That if you have the ability to install software and you have another account, now with most modern OSs, it's easy to elevate your privileges while you're still logged in as a user to install that. So I think just some of the wording actually caused some issues, because it was like you can't have admin accounts when really you should be running as a least privileged user.
Related to this, you mentioned research that people couldn't do because of restrictions. Now I know where I am, and I'm sure in most other areas, we do whatever we can to accommodate them and bend over backwards. So what's an example of something a researcher needs that you can't provide? Because even 80/20 provides exceptions.
True. I mean, there's probably ways to do some of the things. Some of the things we've done where, I mean, and this goes back to policy, we don't give grad students admin rights. So, that is just, again, it's a rule. It's kind of a pointless rule. But because we don't do it, and that's one of the things we're going to change next week after the semester's over. Because we don't do that, we have basically grad student clusters, research clusters for grad students, where the vendor has to come in with admin rights because it's complicated, I don't know, some sort of complicated engineering thing that I honestly don't know all that much about, which is part of the reason it's their project, not mine. But they have to have the vendor come in regularly. The vendor has to have admin rights to do what they need to do. They're doing things directly to the hardware. The equipment speaks directly to the hardware. The machine has to sit there with admin rights all the time. And we don't have a way of doing that without, our solution was to take it off the network, which is not a very good solution, because then it loses out of our inventory because we have dynamic inventory. It loses all of its Windows updates and security updates, which it doesn't need since it's off the network. But then if we do need to throw it back on the network briefly for some sort of emergency vendor access, then we've got a machine that doesn't have all of its patches and things. So it's just causing us to have to do a whole bunch of hoop jumping, essentially, and make them do hoop jumping. What I'm trying to get away from is making my users jump through hoops that only exist because of IT reasons. So they shouldn't have to jump through IT hoops. Those should be for me to jump through. And so any situation where I'm forcing my users to jump through hoops because of me, I'm trying to eliminate those situations. John? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One question I had was, when there are issues, what course do you typically take after this year?
When there are issues, what course do you typically take to clean an issue on a system manually, to do a system restore, or to rebuild the system from scratch?
Currently or in the future? Currently,
and then kind of contrast that with kind of in the future.
Again, this doesn't exist, but in my ideal world, all the machines would be snapshotted regularly, just like we snapshot our servers now, and we could roll back a machine. If we snapshot it once an hour, if somebody gets a virus, we just roll them back an hour and they're good to go. And just like we can roll a server back near instantaneously, we should be able to roll a PC back near instantaneously, at which point it ceases to matter that they trashed their computer. So that is really what I'm looking to have in the future. Whether we do that through some sort of virtual desktops for everyone, which is a possibility, or I'm not sure what exactly we're going to do, but that is really the goal we have, is to make it so that we can give everybody admin rights, they can trash their computer, and and they can just make a phone call and roll it right back again and be good to go. So.
It's interesting that I put the question out here, and of the 17 people who responded, none of them used system restore.
Okay.
2 manuals and 19, now 20 rebuilds. So they're just rebuilding.
That's what we do. We rebuild them. Yeah, that is exactly right. Now, I mean, our rebuild process is automated, but you know, it's the build key, so it's not as bad as all that. But when you start having to restore their data, restore their individual applications and all of that, it adds up. So if you get a complicated user and they get a problem on their PC, it can be a while before they get it back. So, and it helps to give them a spare, but it doesn't help their data, and it doesn't help their specialty applications. So, John, do you got anything you want to throw in?
Install BigFix.
We have done that.
Well, and I think I'll just add one more thing about policies, and you know, the AD policies are, you know, overarching for the whole university, and a lot of times we rely on people like Greg, who is closer to his users and can understand, you know, what his users need to do and the business need that they have to do. So we rely on you guys to write local policies that, you know, can conform to the larger policy, but can actually give the users the flexibility that you need. A lot of the questions we got is, why can't you just say no admin rights, you know, in 80/20? And the issue with that is, you know, as we talked about today, is that there might actually be needs to have administrative rights to elevate privileges. So we really do rely on a lot of the local units who know their users the best to be able to write local policies, to be able to support them in what they need to do for the research.
And I'll say, you know, the kind of scary thing about 80/20 is that this one is fairly old, and if you look at it, really there's almost nothing that you're required to do because of 80/20. So, you know, the real issue is honestly the auditing worksheet. So, you know, if you want to know what you actually have to do, the thing to do is to go to the auditing website and pull up the auditing worksheet and make sure you're compliant with the audit. So that's really your measure of whether you're succeeding or not, in my mind, is whether or not you can say, yes, I meet all these audit guidelines. And those are essentially, and to me, the auditing guidelines are an implementation of policy, or they're a particular interpretation of policy, which is the interpretation we are currently required to meet to say that we're in compliance with the policy. So I don't know if that's how the auditor's office looks at it, but that's how I look at it, is those guidelines are kind of my Bible. When I judge myself as to how well I'm doing, I look at the auditing guidelines and say, am I meeting them or not? If I'm meeting them, I figure I'm doing well from an IT perspective. So then the question is, am I doing well from a user perspective?
One comment, I'm not sure
Okay.
what is meant by it. Couldn't this computer be placed on the Penn State wireless, same as someone's personal device?
So the comment is, could the computer be placed on Penn State wireless like someone's personal device? I mean, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're, honestly, I'm kind of leaning that way. I almost think, you know, we have been talking about taking all of our laptops off our domain completely and forcing every single laptop to come in through wireless, because the laptops are a struggle to administer. Then they lose access to the wire, their network speeds go down, they can't get their updates as easily. There's a lot of drawbacks of doing that, so I don't know that I really want to do that, but that gets me closer to my goal of having flexibility, because then I'm not restricting their devices. But they lose a lot if I do that as well. So, you know, but if somebody comes with an iPad, I don't give them the option of plugging into the wire, because they can't. So why shouldn't I say, hey, laptop users, you're not plugging into the wire? And if nothing else, I can grandfather in all my existing laptops, let them keep plugging into the wire, and just not tell new people about it at all. Give them wireless devices. Yeah, think of it as BYOD. Chuck?
I'm concerned there may be a basic misconception about the nature of the wireless network and why it's kind of free range the way it is. That's not by design, and that is by no means a permanent definition of the service. It's largely personal devices and departmentally managed university devices. There's an expectation that the departmentally managed devices are set up in a usable, secure manner. If you undo that, and we get tons of compromises of university networks on the wireless, where the wireless is going to get locked down just like the wire. So if you think that's an answer to this problem, it's really not. It would just be a short-term workaround, and we're going to have to lock that down, and then everybody's hosed.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think Chuck got it out before I could comment on it. We are seeing, especially with mobile devices and laptops, that even though they might have a wired connection, you know, in their office at Penn State Harrisburg, but when they come up to UP or something like that, they're using the wireless, and so we've almost started looking at wireless just as a extension to the admin LAN. But I know that we are looking at ways for guest wireless and things like that might help. But as we get more mobile, the wireless LAN just becomes an extension of the admin LAN.
Right. So again, to I guess wrap up, unless we have more questions. But I'm not in any way suggesting I have a solution up here. There's no solution. What I am saying is all of us, if nothing else, for the sake of your long-term job security, you have to be able to meet the research needs. You have to be able to meet the exceptional needs. By exceptional, I don't mean super fantastic. I mean exception. They are exceptions, right? So it's the exceptional IT that we have to be better at as a group, so that we can't just be outsourced. All right, and so if you go back and you look at your server room and you think I've got a great server room, lots of people have great server rooms, right? So that's not a piece of safety for you. You want to make sure that if somebody comes in and has a really hard question, that those are the questions you have good answers for. It's not those easy questions. We can all do the easy stuff. It's the really, really hard stuff that we have to be really good at, and we have to be good at not saying no to. And so just putting in everyone's head. It'll take years before we get there, I think, but we're starting. So that's where we are, and we appreciate, honestly, really do, the opportunity to get here and have you guys, in the conversation from the beginning, so you know what we're trying to do, and you can try to help us out.
Thanks, Greg. And just one thing I wanted to add. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the minimum security baseline. That was actually just passed into policy. It's guideline ADG02. So go check that out. We get from a lot of sysadmins saying, tell us what we need to do. And so the minimum security baseline is an exhaustive list of some controls to do. And just like when we talk about local policies, we know that there's going to be exceptions to that. We know there are going to be different ways to do things other than what's noted there. Actually, phase 2 of the data categorization process will focus on talking about the minimum security baseline and coming into compliance with that. So go check that out. If you have any questions, let us know.
Okay, thank you all very much.